Eric Rittmeyer joins me now to talk about the pro-police movement in this country. Back the Blue, We Back Blue, has upcoming events, and we want to get into that as well, Eric. But first, the simple people out there who just want to keep it, clean. Why is it important that law enforcement exists in this country?
You know what's crazy, David? The thought of us even having this conversation is just so insane to me. But it's where we are now. It's just so crazy to me that it's not even about what party you're affiliated with anymore. We're just incapable of seeing how insane everything is. If you'd have muttered the words defund the police a couple months ago, you'd have been laughed at. Now it's like we've just systematically desensitized everyone to say, okay, yeah, maybe we should defund the police. You got New York getting rid of $1 billion off their budget. It's time we stop. We're allowing the media, we're allowing politicians to tell us who we're supposed to dislike. They're trying to prevent clarity because they know with clarity comes unity. Without police, we have total mayhem. We have police right now, and we're still experiencing mayhem. It's insanity.
All right, and that's part of the public consciousness and actions going on out there. When you look at Portland protesters, they're no longer going after federal buildings as they claim. Now, that was ever it for the rioters. Actually, I made the mistake of calling them protesters. They're not protesters, they're rioters. But they're going into residential districts. They have gone beyond. Mayor Lori Lightfoot banned protests down her street for safety reasons. They don't hate Lori Lightfoot. She's part of the problem with them. So how do we turn this around?
Yeah, same way during the COVID shutdown, it was okay for her to get her hair done because she's a public figure. I mean, do as I say, not as I do. I mean, it's lead by example. And the issue is when we start talking about defunding police, I don't think the majority of people understand because it's not directly affecting them. Until they start walking down your street, until they start throwing stuff through your windows, you're not directly affected by it. So the thought process here, you have some things that happen that are very, very bad, but the thought of assigning what I refer to as collective punishment for isolated guilt is insanity. You have a fraction of bad things happening in the police force. So what do you think? We take money away and pull them out of the places they're needed the most? Somebody's got to start thinking logically here. It's getting dangerous.
All right, let's talk about parents and kids because, I'm going to go back to the way I was raised. Walter, other officers, never forget it. Walter had a boat, which was really cool. So we could go out with Walter. He was a sergeant. I was taught to see police and law enforcement for what it was, part of the structure in our society that maintains an ordered society. And it stuck with me for the rest of my life, and it expanded with, obviously, the work with law enforcement and nonprofits like yours and others. But I think we have to go back there. I get it. We have to have the big fight, the obvious things going on now in our cities and the shootings and criminality, the stolen packages, mailboxes being broken into. That's happening all around my neighborhood daily. But we've got to go to ground on this and not forget to start teaching that relationship. Are we doing that enough? How do we do it? And why the hell aren't parents doing it?
David, you're hitting the nail on the head here. This is what I'm so passionate about, is the lack of fathers in households. If you go to the cities that have the biggest problems with crime, Baltimore, Chicago, these are places that have households where 75% of them are without fathers. Okay, the lack of family structure is a major contributing factor. You said it as a child. You were taught to not only respect somebody in uniform, you were taught to respect somebody who was older than you. They demanded that respect just based on their age. We're not being taught this. Our kids aren't being taught this. They're growing up in this social media age as opposed to social interaction. They have no way to show their emotion other than rage, violence. They need to be taught an emotional vocabulary, and our schools aren't doing that. Not a jab at our schools, but they need basic emotional intelligence skills. They're not getting that right now.
Yeah, and okay, fair enough that, the father component is a big part. A blended family, a family with a strong male figure in some ways important. You need that male-female dynamic to have a better chance. Reality is we don't have it. We have generational poverty. We have generational living in the same project or housing community, whatever, low-income housing. So we've got to get through that because we can't just, and I'm not suggesting you're suggesting leave it alone, but we've got to find a way to get in there to those mothers, those single mothers, I don't care what color they are, and say, look, we got to get to your kids now before they become a problem later. How do we do that?
Yeah, a wonderful question. And it all goes back to fathers. Men have to step up to the plate, David. This is where it all starts. If you go back to the 1960s, I'm all about looking for common denominators here.
What I'm getting at is a tragedy in this country is there's often not a father or male figure, the blended family unit, whether it's an uncle, maybe it's a big brother, whatever the case may be, that's missing. So we still have to deal with that. We have to get to that mother. We can't solve the problem because we can't just bring a dad in and say, here you go, you've got a dad in the household, obviously. So how do we get to that mother or that grandmother?
Yeah, and that's a difficult thing because obviously all the weight is on their shoulders. And again, I go back to common threads here, and it is the family. It's the lack of the family structure. If you go back to the 1960s, just 9% of households were single-parent households. Fast forward to 2019, it's almost tripled, 26%. So do you think it's a coincidence that we're dealing with all this violence and anger and rage? It's the lack of the family structure. So if you go to the moms now, and they take the brunt end of this, I mean, they're the ones that are working, taking care of kids. They have to go out there and do what they got to do and discipline. And I'm not saying moms can't do a wonderful job. They absolutely can. But males and females parent differently. Males are going to throw their sons into the fire. Hey, this is a problem. Fix it. We're going to teach them critical thinking skills. This is how we treat women. I'm going to lead by example. I'm going to show you. A woman absolutely does a wonderful job, but they parent differently. It's more. There's normally more compassion. There's more explaining. The men are what's missing from this equation. The men have got to step up to the plate.